And so today we have a new company that will be introducing itself, Linguado. It's a company that participates in X-Culture for the first time. The company has a very interesting product. So I met probably with about 40 different companies this semester that wanted to participate in X-Culture. Most of them were sort of, I don't want to call them boring, but we had like a dozen companies that make clothing, quite a few companies that make food, almost sort of the same in many respects. We had a few companies that have very sort of unique specialized products like ball bearings or drill bits. So those are products that perhaps our students have little knowledge of. With Linguado, it was different. So like 2 minutes into our initial meeting, once I understood what the product is, it was clear to me that first it's interesting and good in and of itself, but also a perfect fit for X-Culture. So many X-Culture students are all around the world and learning foreign languages. And Linguado is uniquely suited as a product for this population. And so my hope here was that not only our own students can potentially become clients of the company, but also that's a product they can relate to. That's a product they probably have used in some form from another company or would like to use, and hopefully can come up with many interesting ideas. And so Linguado was obviously invited right away. And so here we are to learn a little bit more about the company. Those of you who are watching live, you can always ask the questions in Q&A. Those who will be watching in a recording, you can, hopefully we will have answered all of your questions by the time this webinar is over and you're watching it. But if not, you can always email us with additional questions. We will relay them to the company. And then once we have the answers, we will relay them back to you. So I suggest we start with a quick introduction of the company. If you can tell us a little bit more about the history of product. And then we have some questions for you, and I'm sure there will be many more once we start talking.
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Alexander, Linguado's founder. Linguado is made up of a team from people all over the world, kind of like X-Culture. The reason why I think that Linguado is a good fit, kind of symbiotically in a way, with X-Culture is the fact that we are a product for the people, made by the people. And what I mean by that is that, well, first off, Linguado is a language.
It sounds almost like a political slogan,
So Linguado is a language and cultural exchange platform. But the way that we create our product is given by the feedback that the users provide. And many of the users are students just like you guys that are listening in, who many of which who come work for us. And we make them what are called to be moderators. So moderators are users of the product. They're evangelists of the product. They believe in what we believe in, which is giving the world free language access. So what is Linguado? Linguado, as I mentioned, is a language and cultural exchange platform that allows you, the user, to instantly link with native speakers of the language you desire by proximity or worldwide. We have some very unique features on the platform where users can search for other users based on their nationality or the languages they speak. And there's no language barriers. We have in-chat translation. So if I'm speaking to someone from Russia and I don't speak Russian, I can write a message in my native language, let's say English, and translate the outgoing message to Russian. And that Russian speaker can write in Russian, which is their native language. And if they're learning English, can translate that message to one of the languages I speak, in this case, English. So the purpose of this app, as I mentioned, is to provide the world with free language access. And the majority of our users are there to learn languages. That's the number one reason. Number two is for cultural exchange. X-Culture came in at a good time for where we are in our business because we're starting to form partnerships with universities as well to offer students culture credit as a leg to the study abroad program, so that if you are studying a language, you do study abroad, you can continue to use Linguado to study that language and get access to that native speaker of the language that you're learning, Or if you cannot study abroad, if you don't have the financial resources or didn't have the opportunity, maybe it was during the pandemic when travel wasn't as open, you can use Linguado as a way to kind of virtually travel from the palm of your hand.
Alexander, would it be okay if I started asking clarifying questions right away? Because you're touching upon very interesting things, and each of those issues is like a big thing. Like, I didn't know that you do it. To be honest, when you told me about Linguado, I was under the impression that it's only a platform where people meet to practice foreign language. Now, in these 2 minutes that you've been talking, I realized that it's much, much more. So you already talked about cultural exchange, not even language per se, which is a big, big deal. So it seems like people can interact even if they don't speak each other's language. Now, you also mentioned college credits. That's an extremely interesting proposition. So in fact, I suspect it would be of much interest to our students. So can we go through those issues one by one? So first, cultural exchange. So what is the core of the app? Because I thought it was simply a meeting place. Let's say I would like to learn Spanish. I just meet someone from Spain, for example, or from whatever, Mexico, a country, Spanish speaking, and that's it. But it sounds like there is much more to the product itself. Can you explain that specific, like core value proposition first?
So the number one way to learn a language is through language immersion. If you're taking a language at school, or you're using Duolingo, which I'm sure most of the people here listening have heard of, and maybe even tried, how do you know what you're learning is applicable? You need to practice with native speakers, and that's what Linguado provides. But aside from language learning, we've done a survey with now about 500,000 users on our platform as to why they're using the app. The number one reason is language exchange. Number two is cultural exchange. And number three is travel. I myself use it for travel purposes all the time. Airbnb, for example, they have a new leg of their monetization model where now, like, if you're renting a home in Paris through Airbnb and you want to do a wine tour, you can use Airbnb experiences. Many users use it for travel purposes, and I'll get to this, but this is one of the ways that we actually plan to monetize in the future too. But please, Vas, if you keep me on course with however you want to.
So yeah, I still would like to kind of go back to the original. So it's a platform, right? So I log into the app, I select the language, and I can instantly be matched with the person who speaks that language. So is that sort of the main idea, or there is much more than just that?
The main idea is to pair you with someone so that you can have a conversation for language and cultural purposes. Yes.
Okay. But then also you mentioned, like, for example, travel. So does it mean that I can even meet some people on the ground, so to speak, or it's all conversation like Skype-like or Zoom-like, or both?
No. We very much hope that the digital relationship becomes a real one. You can do video calls through the application. And we're actually, you're coming in, X Culture is coming into our lives at an exciting time because we're creating a new version of the application where we will also have games, but in a multiplayer setting. They're language learning games. And one thing that I didn't say that I should have said at the beginning is that this is a social community. We are a social platform of language enthusiasts. And many of the people that come to Linguado are not just there to learn, they're also there to teach. And we're also looking to monetize from that portion as well, where Linguado, the future of this business, will become a peer-to-peer marketplace for language services. I think it's important. I just give like a brief background on myself, if that's okay, being the founder. But, I'm an American that, I lived roughly 6-7 years in Brazil, 3 years, Spain, Portugal, and almost 2 years now in Serbia. The languages that I speak best are the ones not that I studied, but the ones that I have immersed myself in. And that's what I'm trying to recreate with this product. I've also worked as a teacher from high school level, teaching high school Spanish, pre-elementary school Spanish. I've taught ESL, English as a second language, to adults. And I've also worked for the largest privately run language services firm in the world called TransPerfect. And the biggest headache that they had and have is something that I'm trying to solve with Linguado, which is they only are working in the B2B setting. So if a Japanese law firm is merging with a Brazilian law firm and they need a 100-page document translated from Japanese to Portuguese and need to send a translator on site, they'll get that done for you within 24 hours by outsourcing all the work. But what if it's just me? What if it's just you, Vaz, who wants to find someone to translate their website?
Right.
What if you're in Rome for 3 days and you want a personal tour guide, someone to hold your hand, an Italian to take you around? That's what Linguado will provide, is a peer-to-peer marketplace for language-specific services, where we would take a percentage of the transaction from the buyer and the seller. And that's why we kind of like to model ourselves as the Airbnb of the language world.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. It sounds more like Airbnb with the language and cultural interaction sort of feature, rather than simply a place where people go to learn languages, right?
So well, it's both. Right now, to simplify, you could consider ourselves, let's say, like the Tinder of language and cultural exchange, because we are pairing people, right? But the future of this is, of course, for us to earn a piece of these transactions. We already have proof of concept now, because we have teachers, students, schools that come to the platform to either teach or learn. We have interpreters, people that do transcription. So many of that work is being done, but it's being done outside of the platform.
So it's not only Airbnb and Tinder, it's also Upwork in a way.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started to create this company, somebody said, you don't want to use the word hybrid, right? It's not a good term to use in this space. I totally disagree. If you can be a one-stop shop for a service or a multitude of services that attacks a variety of needs in the language culture space, that also encompasses learning and forces interactions between people from all over the world, why not?
Alexander, so it actually reminds me very much the story of, for example, WeChat in China. So that platform started purely as a messenger, nothing else. And now it does like everything from booking your doctor's appointment to managing your calendar. Like it's literally just about every app in one. And I think they kind of grew organically. I mean, originally it was a very, very simple messenger, and then more and more was added over time. And it seems to me that with your app, I mean, that the opportunities are literally limitless. I mean, it can become sort of like a WeChat of the United States that started as a language learning app, right? So I don't know, why not?
Well, look, the first thing I said was that, like, and it sounded, as you said, political, but like an app for the users, by the users. The users are always going to dictate what we morph into, evolve into, become. And that's kind of, what we have been seeing. I have integrity, right? And I have integrity for this platform. So if everyone on this platform wanted to date, because of course, when you have a social platform, dating will always be a side effect of any sort of social platform. I would have to think about it, because I don't want this to be a dating platform. But the users dictate it. And after surveying our users, that's not what this is. The third reason, as I said, besides behind language and culture, is travel. Fourth would be social or dating. Fifth, a lot of people are here for career purposes. Many people are learning languages to...
You kind of add the LinkedIn functionality to that as well.
Correct. Yeah. So right now, it is a unique chatting platform where there are no language barriers. You can filter people by their nationality, the language they speak. You can find them based on their location. But what we're building towards is to have classrooms, so that our moderators, which are users of the app, can literally moderate these classrooms and offer conversation. Sometimes people will join Linguado, and one of the complaints we hear is, "Oh, I have no one to talk to." You know, we're almost at 1 million users, and to have someone say on the platform, "I have no one to talk to," it's really disheartening. We're doing something wrong if you hear that, right? So but unfortunately, there's not always going to be, and I used this term earlier, a symbiotic relationship where if I want to learn French and the other person doesn't want to learn English, then what's the advantage of them talking to me? Well, then maybe I could just jump into a French classroom and get exposure to that language. And I can be around other people who want to speak that language. So that's what another feature that we're adding to the new version of Linguado. We call them tribes as classrooms. Mm-hmm. And every week we'll have a mission, 52 missions per year. And so if it's like Spanish conversation, week 1 mission may be sports. You're not into sports, no worries. Week 2 is gastronomy. You really like food, you can sign up for that one. We'll also allow groups, and those are for Linguado Pro users. I think by looking at the syllabus or the outline for this presentation, you wanted to know also kind of like what our business model is. So I can jump into that, but I did want to talk about when we first launched. Yeah. We first launched in 2019, right before the pandemic. We had roughly 3,000 users, and it was very good timing for us because COVID, although it's been terrible for a lot of people, it was very beneficial for Linguado and Linguado users. Everyone's stuck at home. A lot of learning has gone online. People can't travel. So they come to Linguado, and we grew from roughly 3,000 users to about 250,000 users by the end of 2020. And now at the beginning of, let's say we're entering Q2 almost of 2022, we're on pace to have 1 million users soon. Users are spending roughly 21 minutes per day on the application. 4-week retention is around 10%, which may sound low, but actually if you compare it to other social apps,
yeah. That's not low at all. So from what I hear on most social media, most people who create accounts often never come back at all.
Right.
And so in your case, 10%, that's actually quite impressive.
It's usually around 3% if you look at other social platforms.
Yeah. And I assume when you say on average 21 minutes, that probably means that some people spend hours and hours, others just pop up for a few minutes. So I assume that's quite different too. Yeah.
Correct.
Can I ask a few more questions kind of about the basics? Like, for example, so English learning was the original intent. And I mean, English language learning is the original intent. But I assume the demand to practice English is much greater than the demand to practice other languages. And if so, is there a sort of a disbalance on the platform, sort of where the supply of people available to speak English natively is lower than the demand for people who speak English natively, or it's not a problem and it's not all around English?
Well, that's the beauty of marketing and paid advertising, right? You know, if we see an imbalance, if we saw like an increase in people wanting to learn Korean, we would start running ads in Korea. English is the #1 search for language on our platform. It wasn't the reason why necessarily I created it. And if you want, I can talk about the founding story, but the reason why, like in my inspiration, but English, yes, it is the #1 search for language on the platform. It's also the most spoken language on the platform, but not natively, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Probably not fluently. I would say right now, without looking at our data, I think the most spoken language on the platform is probably Spanish, and Brazil has really come to be our pilot nation as far as monetization. It's our first country that we've started to monetize. Brazil is a viral country. You know, if Brazil likes something, they really like it. And because of my time that I spent in Brazil, I do speak fluent Brazilian Portuguese. Steph, who works in marketing, will tell you that the majority of Brazilians who see me do ads or any sort of marketing in Portuguese, they usually think that I'm a Brazilian pretending to be an American, which is not the case. But that's the beauty of immersion. If you have the opportunity to immerse yourself in a language, you can get that type of command of a language. And that's really what I'm trying to recreate with the platform.
One more question, if I may, about languages. So I see why people go to the platform to converse in a foreign language, but that necessarily sort of necessitates that one of the conversation partners speaks in a native language. And so why would anyone go there to be the native language speaker for someone who wants to learn that language? Or is there some sort of a model in place where you have to donate time in your native language to get access to someone with a foreign language that you want to learn? Or how does it work in that respect?
So that's what we're trying to do is when there's an imbalance like that and it's not a perfect match, how can we either avoid that or benefit or somehow better the match? And so we've developed a new algorithm in the new version of the application, which is, we're calling them, I think, top links. When you connect with someone, it's just an alliteration, Linguado link.
Yep.
So you link with another user and you become their friend. Right now, what we're gonna recreate with the new platform is an algorithm where that user may be looking for the nationality and or languages you speak, and you're looking for, in general, the nationality or language that they speak. Also, we've added interest to the platform because maybe, okay, I'm in Serbia and I'm just looking to find someone that plays tennis. I want to find a Serb that plays tennis. That's it. I have no language preference. Right now, I'm here in Miami. Miami is a massive diaspora of people from all over the world. And I remember when I was here in 2018, watching the World Cup, I just wanted to watch Brazil play. I didn't care if anyone spoke Portuguese. I just wanted to go to a bar to be around other Brazilians. Well, how can I do that on any other platform? I remember I was in Serbia watching the Super Bowl. I wanted to find a guy from Texas so I could watch Tom Brady throw some touchdowns. How do I do that? I have no language preference there, right? I'm just looking for someone to hang out with. So the use cases are always going to change. I recently went to Egypt as well, for example, and I just wanted to have a really native experience with a local. So be it. I also learned some Arabic. For him, it was a beautiful experience because I was the first native English speaker he'd ever met in his entire life, let alone be the founder of the app. So it was a very powerful experience for him. I'm just a normal guy, not Mark Zuckerberg. Hopefully we get there, but this is the last thing I want to say is that, the reasons for why I created this, that intrinsic value, have always been altruistic. It's really been to help people. So I've already achieved that goal. People are thankful for the platform, getting access to the languages they normally don't have. If you live in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest and you've never spoken English before, you maybe hear it watching movies and TVs. Like, this brings that speaker to them. And that's really powerful. Altruistically, as a founder, my goals have been achieved. But like any business, and I'm sure a lot of your students need to understand how businesses work when they leave the university setting. Yeah, well, of course, we need to monetize. We need to make money. We can't run on fumes forever. Gas prices are already through the roof.
Not only the gas price, just about everything is more expensive.
Right.
But let's talk about that, because most of our in fact, all of our students are business students, and I assume most of them would like to be in a few years where you are now. So most of them aspire to start their own businesses and essentially, follow the journey that you've followed. So I have several related questions to that. One, funding for the business. So you are what, 3 years old now, not even that. And so I'm not sure, are you already cash flow positive? Are you still relying on investment? But a more important question, so what's the business model? So we talked so far, it seems to me that your app already has sort of features of, as you said, Airbnb, Tinder, but also Coursera, LinkedIn, Upwork, Clubhouse, Zoom. It seems to me all of those features could potentially be monetized. It can become a super, cash making machine. But at the same time, I'm under the impression that you are still experimenting with those different models, right? So so what's the sort of revenue source business model at this time? And how is the company funded at this time? If somebody wanted to replicate something like that with a different product, like what are the sources of revenue until the product is successful and profitable?
Yeah, I'll actually answer the latter first. Look, anyone can copy us. I'll be very blunt about that. Anyone can copy Facebook. Anyone can copy Instagram. You either have to do it better or you have to be first to market if you want to be an industry leader. Our IP isn't necessarily protected. We use a lot of open source code in order to create, in order to create the platform we have. We use Google for a lot of API services with translation and things like this. As far as monetization goes, well, look, we are not cash flow positive yet. We raised, so we're roughly, a little over 2 years old, 2.5 years old. We did our first seed round. We started back in Q3 of last year and raised $1 million from roughly 19 angels and 1 VC. And after raising the funds, you realize, you're like, okay, great, $1 million, that's awesome. But it's actually so little. It's nothing. When you're working and trying to build a tech product and a machine that never shuts off, $1 million is pocket change. So we're probably going to go for our second round of funding, let's say another bridge round over the summer. I'd say by late summer of this year, before we go to our Series A. As a founder, you're always doing kind of this juggling act between what do investors want, what do users want, what can you afford, what can you build now versus the future. You can't do everything, but you try. For me, no matter what, it's about the user. It's the user experiences first, right? But we raised $1 million on a $10 million post-money valuation. And I didn't know much about how to fundraise and valuations. My education, and I have a degree in international business, but as far as building a company, building a startup, like I was learning as I went. So, Shark Tank.
Which is a very typical problem we get literally dozens and dozens of inquiries every year from our former X-Culture participants. And so they all have brilliant product ideas, but most of them don't know how to go about building the business. So how do you find the angel investors? How do you find the VCs? Do you need to apply to all those, accelerators and incubators? So people want to build a product, but they don't necessarily know how to build a business. And so I guess,
right.
That's a, recurring theme that I hear in the comments when I talk to my students.
Yeah, I think the percentage, I might be pulling this out of my rear end, but I think like roughly, what is it? Like 3% of startups make it. I know it's very, very low.
Yeah, we have actually, so I got some statistics from a company called Super Founders. And so they say that, 80% of the ideas written on the napkin never become a business plan. 80% of those that become business plans never advance to incorporation and so on. So basically from idea to the actual product in hand, it's like less than 0.1%. So ideas are easy. Right. Building them, that's what's difficult. Like what exactly you said, I'm not sure if students caught that. So copying, replicating, coming up even with ideas, that's easy. It's work that doing it, and often for many years without any prospects or guaranteed income in the end. That's what's difficult. And so I think that's why most businesses fail, not because they didn't come up with a good idea, but because they just failed to go from idea to product.
So for me, the biggest issue is funding from the beginning. I was bootstrapping personally the business for the first 2 years before I ran out of cash and said I can't piggy bank this anymore. We have to get outside investment. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, because A, we needed the money. B, when you have investors on board with you, now you have cheerleaders. You have people that are going to help you for next rounds of funding. They invest in your product. They want it to succeed. So they're kind of like your support system. Getting in bed with a venture capitalist can be like a little bit nerve-wracking because you don't want them to kind of control the puppet in any way whatsoever. Like, I'm still the boss at the end of the day, but you have people that hold you accountable to hopefully there's three ways that we make money. We either are a profitable business, we go public, right? You see LING on the New York Stock Exchange, or we have an exit. Personally, it took us so long. I mean, for me, it was such a journey to get to where I am now. I don't want to be bald or gray hair by the time that we, I exit.
It's funny that you call 2.5 years long. I mean, I still remember the times when it was normal, like 10 years until profitability. I guess now the cycle is much more faster, more intensive. And so,
well, I'm thinking about we launched like Linguado became a usable product where you could download it in the App Store, I think in September of 2019, right? So obviously the idea phase and creation phase before that is we're a few years. And that was a very arduous, tough journey. And I did something very different than most founders. I got out of my seat and traveled the world. I know many founders who hired tech teams by meeting them online, and they kept switching. That is a very common theme in the tech community among founders, is they become unhappy with a group of developers and they move to another country. Or if they're US based, they hire US based developers and they're too expensive, and then they may run out of capital. It's a funny story, but I'll just give you a short glimpse of it. Steph is even a part of it, but I'm a tennis player, and I was invited to Serbia to play tennis. And it just
I actually did have a question. So why Serbia? Why Brazil? So that's not business related. That's your different career or your other career, or?
In 2012, I wanted to have a reincarnation. I wanted to go to a place where I didn't speak the language, I didn't know anybody, and I wanted to make a new home for myself. So for a myriad of reasons, I chose Brazil. I went for 3 months and I stayed for 6.5 years. So it worked out. I learned the language. I fell in love with the culture. I made a new home there. And that was one of my inspirations for wanting to recreate Linguado, because Brazil is the 5th biggest country on the planet, but it's roughly 1 to 3% English speaking. Why? That's really messed up. A country that has all the resources to be an economic powerhouse should be. And there's not a lot written about this, but I promise you, a lot of it has to do with their language barrier. The fact, like, anyone will tell you, if you want to do business in Brazil, you have to speak Portuguese. It's just not an English-friendly country. I remember being at the Olympics in 2016, and this is something I always tell. I even would tell
as an Olympian or as a guest?
No. As a spectator, as a guest.
Spectator, okay.
But this is even in my pitch deck because it's interesting. This was one of my 3 light bulbs for inspiration for creating this, but there were 2 lines to get into the stadium for the opening ceremony. The line for people that have bags and the line for people that don't have bags. And everyone is from all over the world. So the guy working for the Brazilian International Olympic Committee is yelling on his microphone, "Essa fila aqui é para quem tem bolsa e essa fila aqui é para quem não tem." This line's for people that have bags, this line's for people that don't. And no one is moving because no one understands what he's saying. I'm like, yo, man, like, you got to say this in English. Look around. He's like, but I don't speak English. I'm like, oh, come on, give me the microphone. He's like, you speak English? I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, this line's for people that have bags, this line's for people that don't. And then everyone moves around.
2/3 of line. Oh,
Yeah,
really?
and and that's when I really took a hard look. I remember going home later that day and I started looking at the statistics. There's a English language plight in Brazil, but it exists in many other countries around the world. For whatever reason, people really have trouble learning English and many other languages, and it prevents them from getting the career they want, from working for an MNC, a multinational corporation company. And I wanted to change that. If you want me, I can tell you the two other light bulbs that really did it for me.
Please do. Yes, I actually did want to return to your founding story and also pivotal moments. So yes.
Sure.
As said, most of our students would like to start their own business. And so even though the product will be different, but they will be kind of going through the same journey in a way. So the more they learn from you, I guess the fewer mistakes, or at least they will know what to expect.
Look, everything, I mean, this is what I'll say. Every founder who creates something, they're usually trying to solve a problem. And for me, it was either my problem or problems that I saw others have. And that was a big one. The second one, I remember I had left Brazil in 2015 to backpack for 90 days in Europe. And I was on my way to Romania. And I had a layover about 8 hours in Frankfurt, Germany. And I remember myself thinking, I was going to see some friends in Romania for the weekend. They were both American guys that were just there to party, whatever. But I'm not like that. I'm not going to Romania to party. If I'm going to Romania, I want to spend some time there. I want to learn the language, the culture. Like maybe I'll spend a whole month traveling. I didn't know. But because I had 8 hours to kill at the airport, I was like, I wish there was a way I could find a Romanian person right now at the airport so I could I could meet up with them, have coffee, learn a few phrases in Romanian, or find someone in Bucharest, the capital, before I arrived so I could find out where to go, what to do, get some local tips. But I didn't know how to do that, right? How can I find someone based on their nationality, the language they speak, by location? So that was the second problem. And then the third problem didn't happen to me, but it happened to a friend of mine who is a Parisian girl. She's a girl from Paris that I met in Brazil. I was in Paris visiting her on that same backpacking journey in 2015. And she, for whatever reason, really likes Brazilian guys. She nothing against French guys, but she just has a preference for Brazilians. And I remember her being on Tinder in the subway and she's swiping and she's just, Tinder, like all dating apps, they're just going to pull up who's around you. And it's all these Parisian men. She's like, oh, these Parisian men swiping left. She's saying like, I wish there was a way for, I could find Brazilian guys, but with dating apps, you can't filter by nationality. So I was like, yeah, that doesn't exist. So with, there are dating apps that are like, let's say a Latin specific dating app or Eastern European, but nothing where you can directly filter by nationality. So again, Linguado is not a dating app, but that unique filter by nationality is something I haven't seen before in other applications. And I use it all the time, like the World Cup example, right? Or me being in Serbia wanting to watch the Super Bowl with an American. I want to find another American in Belgrade. I think you're from Ukraine, right, Vaz?
Yes, originally from Ukraine.
I mean, and sorry, I don't want to take this this conversation in any sort of political direction, but I will tell you that people are always using the app right now to get in touch with Ukrainians to find out real news, what it's like to be there. And to that's another point.
And that's wonderful because yes, I guess you can do some of that on Facebook, but it's not quite the same thing. So you can follow someone, you can befriend someone, but it's not quite the same thing. So I'm glad that you offer that functionality. In these important times, all of a sudden, there is a huge demand and need, and it's something that is sort of, doing well by doing good. So I really appreciate that your app is used for that.
Yeah, in fact, during Black Lives Matter, when it was in its height during the pandemic, we had many Black Africans get in touch with Black Americans on the platform to find out what it's like to be an African American during BLM. So, I mean, it is a way of getting real news source directly from the source. By the way, I see there's a Q&A here. Someone asked a question.
Yeah, so I want to get to that. Yeah, I see the question there. So we will get to that in a minute. So I wanted to go through all of the questions that you have in the challenge. I know your time is valuable. Would it be actually okay if we did like a blitz? So I have a few questions that are relatively fast, but then I wanted to get to the question asked by Safa. So would that be okay?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
very quickly, what is the pricing model at this time? You said it's free, but I assume there are still some subscription services or maybe some sort of a freemium model. Can you explain how the app works now?
Yeah, as of right now, we're only monetizing, as of today, you know, March 15th. We're monetizing just Brazil, and we're monetizing via ads. We do have native ads built into the platform, so we do earn revenue for impressions, more for clicks. And then also a freemium model where users can pay in Brazilian currency. It converts to like $2.99, roughly $3. It's, you know, more or less 15, 16, 17 reais based on the FX rate of that day. To have a monthly subscription to a premium service, we call it Linguado Pro. And so they have more access to the application. They get unlimited link requests. They get live in-app support with that. They can turn off the ads, things like this. We're soon going to go live with that freemium model to another 19 countries. So it'll be our 20 most active user bases. They'll also have visibility of ads too. But
so what are the extras included in the pro version?
So with Linguado Pro, you get unlimited link requests. Users right now, one thing it's really important that students hear this. I mean, in order for you to earn revenue as a company, you have to be very data driven. You have to track everything that users do on the platform, know where they're spending the most time, know what they're clicking on, because maybe those are things that you want to charge for in the future, right? And so we saw that users were sending, especially in Brazil, more than 20 link requests per day, like friend requests, right? So we put a limit on that to 20. And if you want to send more than 20 in a 24-hour period, we'll give you unlimited, but you have to pay. So it's that. It's that. It's turning off the ads. It's an ad-free version of Linguado, which if you download it right now in the US, it's ads-free. It's ads-free actually worldwide right now, minus Brazil. We test when we go live with stuff, we're always testing first. And this actually relates to one of the who is it, Sarah, I think? Safa's question.
Yeah.
Whoever we bring aboard to work with us, that person is going to definitely be part of our testing program, so that before we go live with certain features, we'd like to test them with people internally. We want people that join from X Culture to be a part of our testing pilot program, so they get access to new features before the world does.
And that's a related question right here. So will the X Culture students be able to test the app? I guess if it's free, they just download it and start testing to see how it works, maybe what's missing, maybe they have some ideas for new features and things like that, right? So there is really no need for a special permission, is there?
No, the company challenge, we have the link for download.
Yeah, you just download, yeah. And in fact, so company challenge, going back to Safa's question. So Safa, you have that brief obviously here. So if you can see my screen. And so the challenge includes some market research. Looking at the industry and competition, who else is the player, what models they use, how Linguado compares to them, strengths, weaknesses, but also thinking about growth opportunities. So here we talked about people who want to learn language, people who want to travel, teachers, but I assume there may be many other market segments that would be potential users of this app. So I guess the question is, can you think about those market segments and growth opportunities? Then marketing is a big question, a big component. And so if I may ask here, so how do you market yourselves now? You said paid advertisement, I assume Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of things, or is there something sort of unusual in that?
Yeah, so we're actually, A lot of it is, well, roughly 60 to 65%. It varies week to week, but it can go anywhere from 55 to 65% of our user base comes to the app organically. And so we actually don't know how a lot of our users come to the platform. We assume it's word of mouth and users telling other users. But for the paid advertisement, sure, we're on all social. I mean, we're on YouTube. We do have paid Facebook ads. We just started. In fact, Steph just started experimenting with paid TikTok ads. Facebook, of course, on Instagram. So we do have ads on Instagram as well. YouTube, I mentioned. We're also on Pinterest, which personally I don't use, but there's a huge following out there for Pinterest. And yeah, I mean, Steph, I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to mention regarding marketing?
Well, you mentioned all the social media apps that we're using. And yes, what we started new kind of implementing is Google ads and TikTok ads, as kind of the market there is growing and people are kind of converting from Facebook, Instagram into TikTok. So it's a bigger market and the ads are kind of more precise. So yes, our plan is kind of to pass those channels, especially Google ads. As Google ads, they go all over Google and they go into YouTube. They can be quite specific. But yes, we have limited kind of funds. We're still doing that in-house and growing it slowly.
Right. We were part of an accelerator as well that you know, I think that our brand grew a fair amount because of the accelerator. It's an Austin-based accelerator called New Chip.
You said Austin, Texas, or?
Austin, Texas based. Yeah, I did it online, but it's Austin, Texas based. You know, they didn't take any equity, which is one of the reasons I wanted to go with them as opposed to Y Combinator or what's another big one? I forget the name. Y Combinator is great. I mean, every YC company has succeeded. Yeah. I kind of changed my mentality about this, but at the beginning, you know, when we were doing our raise, like I don't want to say I was like an equity. Equity is like part of your limbs, your fingertips. Like you don't want to give it up so easy, right? Especially out the gate. So I was very conservative about giving up equity to an accelerator if I didn't know what the benefits would be.
What percent do they demand? Y Combinator? Is it like something like 2-3%, or it's more like 20-30?
No, I think it's roughly between 7 to 10%.
So it is substantial.
So, yeah, I mean, it is substantial. But regarding marketing, one thing I want to say we're big believers in is UGC, user-generated content.
And that's exactly what I wanted to ask. So yes, content marketing and things like that. So, well, I guess content marketing that's generated by the company, but users can be generating some content as well, right?
75% of the marketing we do, if not higher, are our users providing us the material. They're the ones that are giving testimonials. You know, this school that actually we first spoke when I was in Dallas on my way to Louisiana, and I spoke at Centenary College. It's a small school in Louisiana. I spoke there because that was our first pilot university that we're offering culture credit. We're partnering with, and one of the students from that university had traveled to Albania, Kosovo, Serbia during the pandemic because of users he met on the Linguado. He's learning 30 plus languages on the app all at the same time. It's kind of crazy. And he's an American. So he's a walking billboard for us, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Just to finish the list of questions, again, going back to marketing, we talked about that. And then, so there are also a few questions about sort of operations and everyday management. So what would be the best pricing strategy for an app like that? Maybe safety of the users. So wherever people meet, there is always potential for abuse. I assume it's extremely rare, but it can happen if you have 1 million plus users. And then professionalizing the HR department, UX, UI of Linguado app, and then content gathering. So there are finances. So
what we really want from students, I think we don't have enough hands on deck to help us with a lot of the stuff that we need help with. As we continue to grow, how do you scale everything? right?
Exactly.
We're not at 1 million users yet. We will be soon. And so once we get there and we continue to grow, we're going to need more people helping us with support. Yeah. We're going to need more people reading the support messages to find out if this is a bad actor, or, you know, someone cried wolf, made a false claim. Right? We're going to want to expand our marketing team. And one thing that I want to mention is, at least for me to build this application and to build this team, one thing that I like doing outside of our tech, outside of our developers, I do like to give opportunities to young, hungry individuals who are willing to learn and work hard. I don't need to hire a CMO from another company to run our marketing team. Yeah. It doesn't, you know, I'm a very big believer in kind of building and training within. So I've created a lot of, let's say, C-level employees from people that had no previous work experience working for this type of company. I mean, I'm a first-time tech CEO. So for me to judge and not give someone an opportunity, also it's expensive, right? If I want to hire like a CMO from another company to run our marketing team, well, okay, let's wait till we go through our Series A, you know? But when you are kind of going through your first seed round, which is still in many ways like a bootstrapping type of mentality, you can't pay big bucks to get these high C-level employees. And sometimes they're just nice resumes. Are they really going to give you all they got?
So do I hear you correctly? If there are talented students, interested students among the X-Culture crowd here who can bring something of value to your company, you're open to maybe some form of partnership, internships, maybe even jobs?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to hire people that work hard, that really, you know, it's tough to get everyone to bleed, sleep, and breathe Linguado, right? Your developers, my developers, like they're staring at screens all day. They probably want to shoot their brains out at the end of the day. You know, it's like that's part of the job. But, you know, when if you're in marketing, if you're on sales, like if you're in another area of the business, which allows for more creative, of course, I would like to breed and foster that type of environment. As far as working with us, we want many people to join us as moderators. And I'd like to speak about that job function for a second. So moderators are there to get feedback from the users. They talk on the app. They find out what users like, what they don't like. They test new features. They will detect for bugs, right? Obviously, there's always going to be bugs, things we got to fix. They submit them to our development team. We recreate them. We fix them. Steph is someone who actually manages the moderators. We'll probably have in the future, if moderators have a fluency in other languages outside of English, they could also run our classrooms, which we call them tribes. There may be some overlap between our moderators and our teachers who do that. Maybe a moderator could also be a teacher, but the moderators are really there to like help us build a better version of the app that we have. We're also looking in the future to not have this only be a mobile platform, but we want users to be able to use this on bigger screens, on tablets, on web, so that they can use it in the classroom too. Moderators are going to be an extension of, I'd say, our links to also universities. We really want to expand in the university setting. And as far as our paid marketing is concerned, it costs more to target university students ages 18 to 21, especially US based, right? I know X-Culture is not just US based, but it's worldwide, which is great. And if we can expand and have certain X-Culture students be brand ambassadors for us so they can help get other students to use the platform, that'd be amazing. I mean, that's what we really want. Facebook started at the university level. We're not trying to be Facebook, but hey, if we could be the Facebook of language before the whole metaverse started and everything else, sure, like that's awesome. We want to grow virally at the university setting. this would have been a great product if when I was in school, either in high school or college, studying languages, who do I practice with? I didn't have anyone to practice with. So we want our ex-culture students to also be brand ambassadors. And of course, there's gonna be specific things always where we'll need help with copy, with content, maybe writing blogs, expanding the content we have on our website and other social platforms to help with SEO. A lot of times, maybe I'll detect some talent that a university student has that we say, oh, wow, we could use that for this department, right? A lot of times you don't know what you need until you see it. And some students possess a certain talent that could help expand the business, or maybe there's a really good, iOS developer among the bunch.
Exactly. And most importantly, I strongly encourage students to consider these offers or ways to engage with the company. As Steve Jobs said, what was the expression? Do you want to sell sugar water, or you want to come with me and save the world? Linguado is one of a few companies that is in a way saving the world, in my opinion. So it's not just, a product that they sell to make money. It is a product that brings people together. And so in the time when we have all those Brexits and walls being built between the countries and things like that, I think Linguado is bridging countries, cultures, bringing cultures together. So, and I think in a way it is, making the world a better place. So it seems like it's one of those companies that will do well by doing good. And so if I were to start my new career, I would want to be associated with something like this rather than sell proverbial sugar water. So I encourage you to take a closer look at it. So I think we've exhausted pretty much all of the questions, but I have one more, Alex, if I may. So if as I keep saying that most ex-culture students would like to start their own businesses at some point as well. Any words of advice, or perhaps differently, you wake up and it's 2016 again or 2017 again. What would you do differently with your own business? Any things that you learned now that you wish you knew a few years ago?
I definitely would have raised more money for our seed round.
So you mean asked for more or devoted more attention to it, or?
No, I would so we raised $1 million. I would have raised at least 2 to 2.5. For two reasons. One, because once I started raising capital, it just got easier. Once you already have money in the bank, it's like a domino effect. You have to get that first investor. Once you do, and whether he or she is someone of mention worthy, I mean, it really makes things move a lot quicker. But also because $1 million just doesn't give us so much runway. Our burn rate is roughly $55,000, $60,000 a month. So, after I closed the round, I basically had 1 quarter to really focus on product. And now I have to go back to the market again where I'm going to start fundraising. I think, so that's one thing. Secondly, I would say that, this is, I think that, who you really want to make sure who you get in bed with, who you work with, is somebody that can really give you all that they have. One thing I would say for sure is whatever equity you allocate to people for their sweat, called sweat equity, make sure it's vested. Don't give any equity outright. So they have to earn it over a period of time, generally over a 3 to 4 year period. Maybe their equity gets vested every quarter, every half year, or every year. You want to have good advisors as well, and make sure that your advisors are looking out for your best interest. There's a laundry list of things I could tell you. I've done a zillion things wrong. So that's just part of the process.
Inevitable, I guess, for everyone, right?
Yep.
So,
well, look, the toughest thing, I'll say this, the toughest thing, and Steph can probably understand this, is consistency. You have to lead by example, and you have to be consistent. Being a founder is tough, and sure, there's some days you just don't want to get out of bed, like, because you just have so many things on your plate. And that's really why one of the reasons why when Steph had told me about this opportunity, I was like, yeah, let's get some more soldiers. Let's help me. Let's help us. Everyone could use help in this thriving startup, in this that we've created here. So really excited for the opportunity.
So did you ever think that maybe it would have been better just to get a job at a big company and have an 8 to 5 and then not worry about anything else after the sort of end of the day bell?
I've done it. No regrets. I've done it. I mean, if at the end of the day, like if things don't work out, I'm still going to have a pulse. I'm still going to be alive. Yeah. I can always get a job like that. Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But the way, and maybe even have a much high, really high level position at a different firm. If I wanted to apply to be CEO at another startup, I could do that at this stage. But
I have not met an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs, as they say, sleep like babies, wake up every few hours, cry a little, and then go back to sleep because it is stressful. But I've never seen a single entrepreneur who would say, oh yeah, I would prefer a 9 to 5 job. Somehow it seems like, I'm not sure if it's addictive or if it's self-selection bias, but it seems like everyone wants this life where you're in action, where you make decisions instead of someone who works from 8 till 5. I guess maybe, there are people who would prefer that, but I've never seen anyone who tried starting a business and wanted to go to the corporate life.
Depends, right? I think an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur by nature, by birth. But sometimes the grass is a little bit greener, or it's, but it can also be greener where you water it, right? So
that's a good expression. I've never heard that twist. You're right.
Yeah. I have, if I sprinkle the water on the Linguado grass, we have some great days. And that's the thing, the achievements you have, like selling my first subscription, right? That was awesome. The first message being sent on the app, the first time a user spoke to me, and, he actually cried because it was a user in Yemen. It was the first native English speaker he had ever talked to. It was a huge moment for him. And for me, that was awesome. Like the achievements you have as an entrepreneur, these milestones, I don't think they can be created if you work for another business, right? When you're creating it and you're changing the world and you see the world using your product, there's nothing like it.
Important question though. So would you recommend our students to first get a real job at a corporation and then start their own business, or don't waste the time, start the business as soon as possible if you plan to start a business at some point in your life?
I've had real jobs. I worked on Wall Street. I worked for this language services firm. I've taught languages for schools. I worked in the merchant services business.
So did that help, or you wish you started Linguado before all of that, like 10 years ago?
I believe in crossing as much off the list as you can. I think that, people say, life is short. I mean, not really. Life is long. You have time to try stuff. You just have to do it. So I think the best thing, I think people waste too much time wondering and thinking, should I, where they could just accept that job and think on the side. If they want to leave, go for it. But I mean, everyone needs money to put bread, to put food on the table. So the only thing I wouldn't waste is time, right? You have so much of it, but still don't waste it, because you can always be doing something. I wouldn't recommend that everyone, hey, if you want to get your feet wet with a company before you start your entrepreneurial path, do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's probably a good idea. I would just say, don't get trapped. Don't get too comfortable. Yeah. Comfort kills. And in with jobs, relationships, in life, significant others, you don't want to get too comfortable with anything.
That's true. So, yeah, while you're straight out of college, you have very little luggage or baggage, and you can try anything. Once you have family, kids, mortgage, a relatively good job at a corporation, at that time, it would be very, very difficult to leave everything and start something risky.
Yep. Yeah, I would see, if you can, you know, even if you have your high school sweetheart, like maybe still wait a minute before you
or get into it together. I don't know. I mean, there are some power couples, you know. So
there are.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we've exhausted more of your time than we asked for. So thank you so much. I actually still had a few questions, but I guess maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. I still wanted to hear a little bit more about the story, the team, the challenges you encountered along the way. We'll get to that at some point. So for students, you do have the brief. You can read all the questions there. If you have additional questions, do email them to us and we will connect you with the company. And for the company, well, let's hope that X-Culture students will bring you lots of interesting ideas and maybe business leads and maybe even become some sort of local representatives, ambassadors, or you know, connect you with universities that can, because I can see a lot of applications here, not only at the university level and above, but also for younger kids. So, oh yeah, you have it there. Exactly. Yes.
Hey, listen, happy to speak more if you want to schedule another webinar.
Maybe in a few weeks, once the students have started working on the challenge, I think by that time they will have more specific questions. Once they've done the initial research, once they've come up with some ideas, usually they want to have that second webinar where they share with you either questions or ideas and they would like for feedback. And so maybe we'll do another one, maybe like early April or something like that, if you have time for that.
Sure, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, let's plan on that. Yes, Stefan.
In the meantime, we created a Facebook group where they can also post any questions that they may have.
Yes. And I think it's right here linked on the first page, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So students, yeah, right here. So yeah, you have the full
and
list.
And a weekly 30-minute call, which will probably be with me, but maybe Alex.
So you even have the weekly. You're right. You're right. So that's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. So you even have the sort of office hours, so to speak. So yes, I encourage students to use that as much as possible. Usually students are, you know, as I said, sleeping or at work or at school. So you can have really private conversations, even if only for a short while, but you know, this is a unique opportunity for you to connect directly with the company. So don't waste it. Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys. As I said, it's a great app. So I'll definitely try it myself. And thank you so much. So let's see what X-Culture students come up with. So,
thank you, everybody.
Have a nice evening, nice morning, wherever you guys are.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.